Topic for today's presentation is impacts and implications of warming in the Eastern Himalayas. So, is my screen visible? Can somebody let me know?
Yes, sir. It's visible,
Okay.
sir.
Perfect. So, let me start with a weather report. As you may be aware, across the world, we are seeing great anomalies in the weather, and some of the highest ever temperatures ever recorded on Earth has come in the last 2 weeks or so across North America, uh, parts of Europe, North Africa, uh, whereas some parts of South America and Antarctica has experienced extreme colds. Death Valley, very aptly named as the Furnace Creek, recorded 54.4 degrees Celsius, which is arguably the world heat record. Now, on the right, of course, is the 42-degree nighttime temperature, which is also the highest ever in North American history. Imagine trying to sleep when it is 42 degrees Celsius in the night. All of this has happened in the last 2 weeks. 49.6 degree was recorded in a place called Lytton. This small settlement actually broke the heat records on 3 consecutive days, and on the 4th day, a fire destroyed the city completely. And this was a First Nation settlement or Indigenous peoples settlement, the people who are usually at the front lines of the climate crisis. People are increasingly calling it the hothouse effect, and North America was not the only place where we are seeing this record temperatures. In fact, there's this place called Jehra, which recorded 51.2 degrees Celsius, and many other places around the world broke records. On the other hand, we saw extreme cold temperatures at Antarctica and parts of South America. But if you look at the belt between the two tropics where the majority of people live in the world, this was the most hottest places on Earth. Now, why is this happening? We have all heard of climate change. I'm not going to talk about climate change at all here, just to give you a context of how much it is attributed to us. We are adding 152 million tons of warming every 24 hours. So we are basically treating the atmosphere as an open sewer where we are dumping everything. And all this happens because of human development activities. Everything we do is connected with greenhouse emissions, whether we are flying in an aeroplane or driving a car, industrial agriculture, coal mining, which is very relevant for us here in Northeast, crop burning, very relevant in parts of Delhi and other parts of North India. Forest fires, which is happening now increasingly, it is connected to rising temperatures as well. Then we also hear about garbage dumping and landfills, which is becoming an issue in our parts as well. Now, this Global Climate Risk Index published last year actually placed India on a high. It was ranked among the worst affected countries of the world, among the top 10. And in terms of money that is costing us, it was ranked as 7th. So unless we act now, India risks deeper, more systematic effects in the future. Already temperature is on the rise, rainfall is decreasing, and extreme weather events are becoming more common. Now, this is the picture as a whole for all of India. In the short term, however, we in the Northeast, in the Eastern Himalayas, we are likely to see more precipitation, more rain. We'll come to that again. And last year was also the year when we had the first ever assessment for climate change in the Indian region. And if you look at the second paragraph, the Hindu Kush Himalayas experienced a temperature rise of 1.3 degrees Celsius already between the years 1950 to 2014. Now, remember the Paris Agreement goal is to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Now we are already at 1.3. That means we are going to see a lot of more impacts in this region than many parts of the world. Now, coming to the Eastern Himalayan region, this is not just the Northeast. Of course, it encompasses a lot of other countries, including Bhutan, parts of Nepal, and parts of Tibet, China as well, and Myanmar as well. The Hindu Kush Himalaya assessment, which was published in 2019 January, again, it has showed widespread effects of warming. And something that really concerns me is the vegetation change. Of course, there is glacial melting, there is all that, but that vegetation change is also affecting wildlife, the biodiversity, and the lives and cultures of people. Coming back to the glacial loss, well, loss of glaciers will have a lot of effect on water, energy, and food security of the entire region, especially when about 2 billion people are directly dependent on the Asian water towers. All these glaciers that supply water to the big rivers, the Ganga, the Brahmaputra, and all those rivers in Pakistan, China, all of these. And these rivers are the cradles of some of the biggest civilizations, the oldest civilizations, and some of the most populous countries are actually located here, right? And that is what is at stake. Up to 4 billion people are indirectly and directly affected by the water crisis in the future. Especially in the Eastern Himalayas, now we cannot think of water scarcity. Most of us are located here in flood-prone states, whether it is in Assam or in Bihar or in Bengal. It is floods we are worried about, non-stop rain that we are worried about. But in the future, the projected loss of 95% of glaciers, if warming continues unchecked, is definitely going to cause water scarcity in the region. Of course, we'll have floods in the short term, but in the long term, that is going to be water scarcity in this area. Even if we were to limit warming to the Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degree, we will still lose 2/3 of the glaciers. So that is a big concern for the Eastern Himalayas. Of course, the current concern, because of glacial loss, we will see the increase in the volume of water coming down the rivers, because about 30 to 40% are glacial fed, all these rivers. And that means we will see more floods and erosions, a loss of livelihoods, biodiversity. And of course, that is so important in the context of the conflicts that we have had in this region between humans and wildlife, but even more importantly, between people and people who have been living here and people who have been displaced, people who are identified as refugees and infiltrators, and so on. So we are likely to see an increase in conflicts as well. Now, a lot of reports and government of India declarations have actually named the northeastern states as the most vulnerable to climate change, including at COP24 at Katowice, when Assam and Mizoram were named as the most vulnerable, based on this report by some leading institutions of India, including IITs and Indian Institute of Sciences. So Assam, of course, is the most vulnerable among all the 12 Himalayan states, and that makes us right at the front line of the climate crisis. Of course, I always say that we also can teach the world about resilience. We have communities here who have learned to live with the floods. We have this food crops been grown which are flood resistant. We have people living in stilt houses, which can also be showcased to the world as examples of community resilience. And then if there's any place on Earth which demands climate justice, I believe it is us here in Assam and the rest of Northeast India. Even earlier, there was this report, a data-driven analysis actually, which kind of predicted where in the world water wars are most likely. And I, for one, was surprised to find the Ganga Brahmaputra valley being named as one of the most likely places where water wars will take place. Now, if you look at it in the context of what I said earlier about the water towers and the civilizations in the most popular countries, uh, populous countries, of course, that makes sense. Now, Nile, the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, Tigris, Euphrates, and Colorado river basins. This is where water wars are likely to take place. I hope it doesn't come true, but these are the estimates, these are the data we have. Now, coming back to the Eastern Himalayas, we will look at what are the different impacts. As a whole, the entire Hindu-Kush Himalaya belt is very important in terms of biodiversity. And because of warming, because of climate change, because of vegetation change, about 87% of original habitat will be lost by the turn of the century. And this includes 4 global biodiversity hotspots. It includes 330 plus important bird areas and so much. And most of these are actually biodiversity hot areas are in the Northeast. So 163 globally threatened species exist in the Eastern Himalayan region, which includes all of these mammals and birds and reptiles and amphibians and invertebrates and 36 plant species. And now these count must be increasing. You know, every year we see new species being discovered. In fact, there was a report yesterday where some 35 new species or so are likely to be added from Mizoram. So yeah, we are seeing more and more new discoveries here in the northeastern region, especially. And we also have a lot of protected areas. We have a lot of ecoregions where a lot of endemic, rare species of wildlife, biodiversity are existent. Now, if you look at this map, you could also say that this is one of the most biodiverse areas in the world. That is, but it is also one of the most ethnically diverse areas as well, because we have so many of different indigenous communities, tribes that inhabit this region, each with its own language and culture. And if you look deeply into that, all of our culture is actually intertwined with the biodiversity around us. So if we lose any part of any animal or any plant, then it directly affects the biodiversity. And believe me, these people, all these tribes and communities that inhabited these regions have been sustainable for millennia, you know, much way back before the world itself was invented, of course. Now, I always say that, you know, water is a local issue of global climate change for people and for biodiversity as well. And in fact, it's coming through in strange ways, and we see these newspaper headlines, which is proving them. But if we look at we look at 3 of the iconic animals of our area, all of them who are very sensitive to heat, to vegetation changes, to water availability as well. And we have a history of human wildlife, especially elephant depredation conflicts across Assam. And these will increase when the elephants do not have adequate water, they do not have food, and even otherwise, because they're sensitive to heat, they can, you know, be more, they can cause more conflicts with human beings because of heat stress. Similarly, rhinos become more vulnerable to poaching because they may stray out of protected areas in search of water or food. In fact, in Nepal, the Nile rhinos are likely to migrate into India as they follow the grass line. So that was a concern a few years back that was published in the report. So there are strange kind of impacts. Yes, tigers, the nature of tiger habitats in India are changing because of the change in precipitation patterns. In some areas like Bhutan, in fact, tigers are going up the mountains, and even in Arunachal, that has been recorded. And that means they are going into the area of the snow leopard and then preying on the mountain goats rather than deer, because deer don't live on the mountains. So a snow leopard, being a smaller and equally endangered species, loses out in the fight between the 2 big cats. So there are all this kind of interconnected impacts between biodiversity, the climate crisis, and also the rise of emergence of pandemics like COVID-19, as this report, the Living Planet report published in 2020, last year, December, said, uh, we have lost two-thirds of the global populations of mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles in less than 50 years. That is just incredible. Some of us, for some of us, it has happened within our lifetime. In 50 years, we have lost two-thirds of all this wildlife on Earth. And it is directly connected to human health and well-being. And now more and more studies are coming out with that. And because of that, we are seeing more focus on that. Uh, I put this here because we now have so many species on the IUCN Red List, including our animal, uh, the Gangetic river dolphin, which is among the 31 species that are found around the world. And all of them are, all the freshwater dolphins are now threatened with extinction.